Coming up on today's show.
I think one of the mistakes people make with projects is considering them tasks or single to-dos when they're really a series of tasks.
Yeah, a friend of mine wanted to write a book, and I remember seeing, their little to-do list one time, and it said write book.
So project planning and breaking a project down is the first step.
Project management, today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we are going to tackle some projects. And with projects comes project management and all the elements that go along with that. So we're bringing on Debbie Rosemont from It's Simply Placed. Hi, Debbie. How are you doing today?
Hey, John. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, projects sound really big. They sound like it's something that you never want to get around to because it's so big. But what do you find the problem that most people have with projects and actually getting started? Because I think sometimes it's just about getting started, isn't it?
I agree. I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed by projects, and they might have a project on their task list or their to-do list, but a project is usually a set of tasks, and it involves various components and logistics. Sometimes it can involve other people. And so when it's on a to-do list as a task, then it feels like I never have time to tackle that. So I think one of the mistakes people make with projects is considering them tasks or single to-dos when they're really a series of that.
Yeah, a friend of mine wanted to write a book, and I remember seeing their little to-do list one time, and it said write book. Okay, well that's a little ambitious for a task, isn't it?
I agree. And I think it's okay to have kind of a master list of goals that you hope to accomplish in work or in life. And so maybe write book is a bucket list or on that master list of projects or goals, but it is a project or goal at that point. It's not a single to-do.
Right. Okay. So we'll get past the single to-do. And I think, I don't know if we even need to talk about, the idea of sometimes we get so cluttered up that we got to get all our things on a piece of paper and maybe get them out of our mind and on a couple different lists or maybe sort them. What do you think about that whole pre-preparation game so you can actually get something done?
Yeah, I think it's really important. So whatever somebody wants to use for managing their projects and managing their tasks, our mind usually isn't a reliable tool. Well, it's not reliable for remembering everything that we want to do. And we can experience a lot of stress when we try to just remember everything or just hold it in our mind. So yes, you're absolutely right. Getting it out of our head, and whether that's onto paper or whether that's in a tool like Evernote or a project management tool like Basecamp. There's a whole bunch of things online, as well as organizational products that you can hold or have on your desk to help you keep track of and manage projects. But our mind isn't a reliable tool for that purpose.
Okay, well, let's say we kind of figured out we maybe have a project and maybe we've gotten over that initial fear of getting started. But in your experience working with people, what keeps them from actually taking the first step or even doing the first task in a project?
It is still the overwhelm, the sense of, oh my gosh, I have this book to write, or I have this major presentation to create, or whatever it is, client work or personal goals, that if we can work to take away the overwhelm first, then we get closer to what is the first action that needs to be taken. So breaking a project down into various components is going to be really important. Ultimately, to the degree where that first step is identified and it by itself isn't overwhelming.
Okay.
So then you can get into action. So project planning and breaking a project down is the first step.
Well, let's look at kind of what's involved maybe from a large level of project planning and, come up with those little categories, and then we'll go back and kind of visit them one at a time. When you're planning a project, what are the first few things you need to look at?
I think you need to consider what it is you're trying to accomplish. So what's the end result? What does the end look like? And, I think it was Stephen Covey, but it could have been another wonderful guru who said, start with the end in mind.
Yep.
So, if you don't know what you're working toward, There's another quote that says any path will get you there. So we don't want to just take any path. We want to take the right one. So when we start with the end in mind and know what it is we're trying to accomplish and get really clear on that, that is our first step in planning anything out. So start with the end in mind, identify what the outcome should look like.
Okay. And then what?
Then we need to start to consider what components, what logistics, what variables, what resources, what people, and that could be a resource, need to be involved. So this is often something that can be done just by putting pen to paper or getting on one of those software tools that I talked about and just doing a brain dump to say, okay, if it is a book that I want to write, what are the steps I need to take, or what are the pieces of that puzzle? So there's the actual writing of the book, and maybe I need to outline my ideas first. Maybe I also need to think about hiring an editor so that after I have a draft, I've got somebody who can help me work through that. Maybe I want to hire a book coach. Maybe I need to line up an ISBN number, the code that makes a book a book. So that, all these components are then tasks or pieces of that project. So you could do that through mind mapping also. Have you ever seen a mind map, John? Do you know what that is?
Oh yeah, I've seen mind maps before, and I want to get into that in just a moment here, but I do want to just make one more comment about taking and breaking things down into tasks. Do you look at like scheduling or prioritizing those tasks? Maybe say you have 15 tasks, or do you try to put them in order? I can't do this one before I do this one.
Yeah. So all the tasks or all the components, you want to try and name them or describe them so they're not necessarily dependent on another thing happening. And I wouldn't worry about putting them in order during the brainstorming process.
Okay.
So our brain works best when we get this flow and we just allow the ideas to come to us. And so just getting all those components down, again, on paper or through a software tool, and then you've got something to go back and to say, well, for this component, I know that needs to happen first, or for this logistic, I've got to get that lined up before I can do the next thing. So
all right.
Brainstorm first.
Okay, and I think what goes along with that is that mind mapping, and I want to talk about that. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get a little deeper into mind mapping for those who don't know what it is, and maybe how you do it, and maybe the tools you use. We're talking about project management with Debbie Rosemont from Simply Placed. The website is It's Simply Placed, and Debbie, we will be right back with more on project management in a moment. Now, there's a place just for you. Life can be busy, and you still have to keep it all together. That's why you like to be organized and in control. Introducing MyOrganized.life, a special place where you can get ideas and solutions to organize what's important to you, your important papers, your important decisions, your important life events. We show you the ideas and products to stay organized in your life. See what's new. Stop by and say hello. Visit us at any time at www.myorganized.life. It's just for you. MyOrganized.life by Smead. Find us at www.myorganized.life. MyOrganized.life. We are back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about project management, taking all those multiple tasks that make up a bigger thing called a project and getting it organized and being able to accomplish that project. And with us is Debbie Rosemont from Simply Placed. Debbie, we talked a little bit about the tasks and getting them off your mind, but there is that, we teased a little bit about that mind mapping and brainstorming. Right. And why is brainstorming and mind mapping even important in a project?
Well, brainstorming is important in just getting everything out of your head, getting things down on paper, especially for people who are visual. It gives you something to look at. You can visualize various parts, and you can brainstorm the parts or components of a project. You could also then take that and start to work it into a project timeline. But the brainstorming piece, which is letting your mind just go and taking everything out of here and getting it into something else that's visible, potentially, that you can share with others, is a great first step.
Yeah, I think also too, when you talked earlier about, what resources do we need, this is maybe where you bring in some help or some other points of view to help you kind of say, well, what are all the possibilities, and then what are the best possibilities that we can use. Now, you alluded a little bit to the mind mapping. Can you do that without software, or explain that process, what it is, and maybe how you do it?
Okay, there certainly is mind mapping software out there specifically, so that is available, but you also can do it just with paper and a pen. You can do it on a regular note paper. You can do it on a big whiteboard. So there's, where you do it is less important than just doing it. You can do it alone, or you can do it with others. Often involving other people in brainstorming, whether it's mind mapping or brainstorming in an outline type fashion, gets you to think about things you wouldn't have otherwise, because something that somebody else will say will prompt you to say, oh yeah, I forgot about that piece of the project. So mind mapping works really well for people who want a different technique than making a linear outline. So it's awesome for creative thinkers, or if you just feel stuck. And I'm going to hold up the start of a mind map here. So you would put in the middle of a piece of paper the name of the goal or the project, what it is you want to accomplish. And then you would start to branch out from there, various components or aspects or logistics to that project, just making like spider legs. And then from any particular aspect, you would write down pieces that are like subcategories to that component. So resources you need, or costs, or something, a minor task that you need to make this component happen, that you need to make the project happen.
Right.
So it is a way of brainstorming, getting things down in kind of a free-flowing, free-form way that's different from just typing it out in an outline.
Well, and also the ones I've seen some pretty complicated ones, but it also kind of helps back with that first step where we've got all the tasks. You start to see maybe a natural a grouping of things together. You've got logistics, let's say. Well, maybe you have to buy a truck, or, rent a truck or whatever. And so that probably also helps you break that project down into more reasonable and doable subparts.
That's right. There's so many ways to do it. So from that center, you could do spokes out with different milestones that you need to hit. And then, from there, the things that need to happen for those milestones. Or you could do spokes out of the center of who will be involved, and then off of that, what they will each do for their contribution to the project. So there's really no right or wrong way to brainstorm or to mind map, but it's an excellent tool for getting ideas out of your head onto paper and to start to take away that overwhelm.
Well, I know in the developing of our new consumer website, which is called myorganized.life, as you can see in our myorganized.life studio here, if you're watching the video of this, but we started the project planning over a year ago. We did the mind map, and one thing that I think was interesting about that is we mapped out these different phases. So we said, well, we need at least this phase one part to be done. So we have more stuff coming on it, but it's, we were able to at least move forward and get something complete and say, okay, we're done with phase one, time to do these other items. And I think that's also, when you're doing a mind map, to look even really big and like, well, I know we're not going to get out here yet, but let's at least start in the center.
Right, and you then have that to come back to. So if you take, whatever it was in the center and have your phase one and all the components there, you can mind map that phase one separately. Right. So then you take another piece of paper or a whiteboard and you put the phase one name in the center and you mind map that out. Work on that, and then when that's complete, you can go back to your original big picture mind map and say, okay, what's phase two called? Let's plan that out now.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about this, because I know some people believe this, is that you say you have a session, and maybe I'm visualizing you're out in the country at a conference center, and you get all the Post-it things up on the wall, and you have a great session and put it all together, but then you have to go back and maybe evaluate it a week or two later. Any tips on revising or maybe thinking through your mind map a little bit more once you're out of the creative mode?
Yeah, well, and that's a great time to either bring in some brains that weren't there during the original brainstorming session to say, okay, here's what we came up with initially. What are we forgetting? Or what on this is a priority? Or, what will work, what won't? Just to get somebody to challenge some of those ideas, or to just play devil's advocate yourself and then say, okay, what if we were able to get all this done? What would we do in addition? So, what are we missing? That sort of thing. You can also then say, all right, we made these grand plans. Now we need to really think about our time, our energy, our resources. What's realistic here? Because maybe we were letting any idea fly, which is great during brainstorming, but now we need to start to really analyze the ideas to say, what's realistic, or where will we start? Like you talked about before with identifying perhaps phases.
Right. Well, this is perfect timing and a perfect segue into talking about when we mind mapped this podcast, we knew there was no way it was all going to get in one episode. So we knew we were probably going to have to bring you back for our next episode. Are you willing to come back? Because I think we've talked about project planning. And we still need to get into some more of that project management. What happens when you start getting the plan together, correct?
Right. We want to make sure that people know how to get the work done. So absolutely, I'd be delighted to come back.
Okay, great. Well, there you have it, folks. Join us next time. We're going to continue this discussion about project management, and we'll get that project done for you. I guarantee it, but you got to come back next time on Keeping You Organized.